All right, good morning, everybody. It is finally Friday.
Good morning. I don't know what you care. Every day's a Saturday.
Yeah, it's the fifth Saturday of the week.
It's Saturday of the week. That's
Yep.
right.
Anyway, we're in there.
Retirement is grand.
Yeah, it is. Okay, today is a four-part parallel. We're going to read the first half of it, first two parts, which is in Matthew and Mark, because it's pretty long. Jesus feeds 5,000. We're going to start in Matthew chapter 14, starting at verse 13. As soon as Jesus heard the news, he left in a boat to a remote area to be alone. But the crowds heard where he was headed, and followed on foot from many towns. Jesus saw the huge crowd, and he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. That evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages to buy food for themselves." But Jesus said, "That isn't necessary. You feed them." But we have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, they answered. "Bring them here," he said. Then he took the people to sit down on the grass. Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish. He looked up towards heaven and blessed them. Then, breaking the loaves into pieces, he gave the bread to the disciples, who distributed it to the people. They all ate as much as they wanted, and afterward the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftovers. About 5,000 men were fed that day, in addition to all the women and children. Now we go to Mark chapter 6, starting at verse 30. As the apostles returned to Jesus from their ministry tour and told them all that they had done and taught, then Jesus said, "Let's go off by ourselves to a quiet place and rest a while." He said this because there were so many people coming and going that Jesus and his disciples didn't have time to eat. So they left by boat for a quiet place where they could be alone. But many people recognized them and saw them leaving, and people from many towns ran ahead along the shore and got there ahead of them. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. Late in the afternoon, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the nearby farms and villages to buy something to eat." But Jesus said, "You feed them." "With what?" they asked. "We have to work for months to earn enough money to buy food for all these people." "How much bread do you have?" he asked. "Go and find out." They came back and reported, "We have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish." Then Jesus told the disciples to have the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of 50 or 100. Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looked up toward heaven, and blessed them. Then, breaking the loaves into pieces, he kept giving the bread to the disciples so they could distribute it to the people. He also divided the fish for everyone to share. They all ate as much as they wanted, and afterward the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftover bread and fish. A total of 5,000 men and their families were fed from those loaves. Now the commentary from Matthew. Jesus sought solitude after the news of John's death. Sometimes we may need to deal with our grief alone. Jesus did not dwell on his grief, but returned to the ministry he came to do. Jesus performed some miracles as sign of his identity. He used other miracles to teach important truths, but here we read he healed people because he had compassion on them. Jesus was and is a loving, caring, and feeling person. When you are suffering, remember that Jesus hurts with you. He has compassion on you. Jesus multiplied 5 loaves and 2 fish to feed over 5,000 people. What he was originally given seemed insufficient, but in his hands it became more than enough. We often feel that our contribution to Jesus is meager, but he can use it and multiply whatever we give him, whether it is talent, time, or treasure. It is when we give them to Jesus that our resources are multiplied. The text states that there were 5,000 men present, besides women and children. Therefore, the total number of people Jesus had fed could have been 10,000 to 15,000. The number of men is listed separately because in the Jewish culture of the day, men and women usually ate separately when in public. The children ate with the women. And now the commentary from Mark. Mark uses the word apostles here, and in Mark 3:14, apostles mean one sent as messenger, authorized agent, or missionary. The word became an official title for Jesus' 12 disciples after his death and resurrection. You find that in Acts 1, verse 25 and 26, and Ephesians chapter 2, verse 20. After the disciples had returned from the mission, Jesus took them away to rest. Doing God's work is very important, but Jesus recognized that to do it effectively, they needed a periodic rest and renewal. Jesus and his disciples, however, did not always find it easy to get the rest they needed. The crowd was as pitiful as a flock of sheep without a shepherd. Sheep are easily scattered. Without a shepherd, they are in grave danger. Jesus was a shepherd who could teach them what they needed to know and keep them from straying from God. See Psalm 23, Isaiah 40, chapter 40, verse 11, Ezekiel chapter 34, verses 5 through 24, and John chapter 10, 11 through 16 for descriptions of the Good Shepherd. When Jesus asked the disciples to provide food for over 5,000 people, they were amazed and said it would take a small fortune to feed such a crowd. How do you react when you are given an impossible task? A situation that seems impossible with human resources is simply an opportunity for God. The disciples did everything they could by gathering the available food and organizing the people into groups. Then, in answer to prayer, God did the impossible. When facing a seemingly impossible task, do what you can and ask God to do the rest. He may see fit to make the impossible happen. Why did Jesus bother to feed these people? He could just as easily have sent them on their way. But Jesus does not ignore needs. He is concerned with every aspect of our lives, the physical as well as the spiritual. We might well ask why the church has taken so lightly the command, you feed them. Jesus' compassion for these hungry people is recorded in all four Gospels. For people who are desperately hungry, there is no better way for us to show God's love than to help provide for the physical needs. As we work to bring wholeness to people's lives, we must never ignore the fact that all of us have both a physical and spiritual needs. It is impossible to minister effectively to the spiritual need without considering the physical need. Also see James chapter 2, verses 14 through 17. Yeah, what came to my mind the other day was we see a lot of, at least I see a lot of things on social media saying, well, you as Christians should, love all these people that are coming in our country, illegally or illegal, it doesn't really matter. And that's true, we should. There's no doubt about that. And that we should, feed them and do this and that. And it got me to think is, what they're really asking for is not to oppose our government in doing all these things. Because I can remember, I think it was in not too long ago, that there was such an uproar over having faith-based charities help people. And that people just lost their minds that they were paying public taxes for faith-based organizations to feed people, house people, clothe people, and just help in general. And so now we just want our government to do it. And there's no worse person on this earth than to let our government handle all these things. We see that every day, how greedy and mismanaged and everything, and it's just not showing the love of Christ for people. Anyway, we're coming up on our time limit here.
Well, I just want to say one thing.
Better hurry up, you got 15 seconds.
We're going to go over. He wants us to be good stewards of what he gave us too.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want us to overuse our portions. For example, okay, the hurricane victims that are in USA, born USA citizens here legally, now FEMA doesn't have the money to help them because they have spent it on the illegals who broke the law to come into our country. And I'm not opposed to helping people. That's not my point. I'm not opposed to loving on the people from other countries that come in. I'm just saying use the door. You know, we shouldn't overspend our blessings. We shouldn't mismanage the blessings that God has provided us. We need to be good stewards with what He's given us, and part of that is taking care of your own as well.
Yes. Okay. Hope everybody enjoys their day, and we will talk to you later.
Video isn't